Good morning, Internet. It is 8:38 in the morning, and welcome back to the channel, itchyboots.com. If you like this video, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe down below, and then I'll see you at the next video. itchyboots.com. I love you, Norley. How's everybody doing this morning? Good morning, Stefano. Martin in Dutch, in Denmark. Yelly from Japan. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Rochester, New York. Jean is here. Ned is here. Mystic Wolf. Eugene, Oregon. Garrett in the Netherlands. Oh, the guys are going climbing. See you later. Bye-bye. Max and Corey heading over to Frenchman Coulee to climb. Liz going downtown to do Pilates at Indigo Yoga in downtown Ellensburg. This episode of Nick from Home brought to you by Indigo Yoga in downtown Ellensburg. You gotta love it. So we had some buffering stuff the last couple of days. And you never know, but I think maybe it's because we had a full house of people. I said, everybody get off of Channel 5, get onto Channel 2. The only person on Channel 5 is this live stream, but still we had stuff. So I told everybody to get lost. So it's just going to be you and me. A few more hellos and then we have some thank yous. Yes, I've started early, but there's thank yous to share with everybody. Anna Marie, good morning. Richard, hello. The Jurassic Coast, UK. Another UK, Stephen. So fun to see people from distant lands here. Lisa from Laytonville. I don't know where that is, Lisa. Andre from Germany. Anna from Finland. Anna-Rika. We can talk about Jordan craters, but I don't know anything. Pakistan. Hey, good morning. Good afternoon. Switzerland, what up, homie? Hotel Papa, 100. Zazu in Belgium, I believe. Mike in Rossland and Old Cinder Cone itself. Really, Mike? I need to learn about Rossland then. Abbotsford, hello. Audrey. John. Allison from Pomeroy. I love Pomeroy, Washington. Zuzak from the Czech Republic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Susan from the Upper Mississippi River. That's fine country as well. Gracie, age 10. Thank you for joining us, Gracie. Kathy in Brisbane, Australia. Patrick is here apparently. People are saying hi to Patrick. William in Manchester, UK. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Go Badgers, Linda. South Bend, Indiana, shake down the thunder. And Bo is from Copenhagen, Denmark. Los Angeles. This is always a thrill. It will never be anything but a thrill. Let's look. So thank you for joining us so early. It's 8:42 in the morning. Let's look at the schedule if I can find it. Is it here? Yes, it is. So this is the week that was. We were up at the campus on Tuesday night. We talked about Bailey Willis. It was here in the backyard, I think, wasn't it? I can't forget. Oregon geology. This morning we're talking about cinder volcanoes. And if you have your favorite cinder cone volcano, I may not be... well, there's a lot of cinder cones to talk about. And we all have an hour. This one's going to be a long one. I've learned a lot in the last 24 hours. I'm particularly excited about this one, but strap in. Evelyn, buckle up. It's going to be a long one, I think. And then tomorrow morning, you're welcome back. Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time for Craters of the Moon. For real. Craters of the Moon in Idaho. Episode number 75. Of course, the wind has picked up as soon as I hit begin stream. So we'll deal with 20, 25 mile an hour winds, but it's too pleasant out here. Everybody's out, by the way. Everybody's out walking, and there's a rummage sale across the way, and Saturday mornings are fun around here, maybe around where you are too. Hello, Maury Longo. Ned Zinger, checking in. Peter from Queensland, good morning. We'll say a few more hellos to folks, and then we'll do a little thank you stuff. Scottsdale, Arizona. Artemis from Scotland. Paige from San Diego. Hello. Big Butte. Jane Russell from Big Butte. Big old Butte. Sid. Hey, Phil. Zing. Oh, I'm amped. I gotta bring myself down here a little bit. Can't be too wild. Hello, Todd. Geologically speaking. Cat Slave 56. I'm not flipping you off. Myra from Canal or Quinnell. I always wonder. Ned Castle, Australia. Was it Daryl? Great to see you. Wes from Ketchikan, Alaska. You guys got the internet up there, huh, Wes? Just kidding. Good morning, Evelyn, age 8. Tim from Squim. Linda from Livermore. Linda and Earl from Livermore, California. Okay, I gotta do some thank yous. It's 1:45. So Dorothy has Miami University in her return address. She's a proud alum of Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Dorothy, thank you for the letter. Very kind of you. Yes, I did teach. That was my first teaching job. Oxford, Ohio, 1989 to 1992. Liz was teaching at Talawanda High School in Oxford, and I was teaching at the university. Fresh out of school. Great jobs. Learned a lot. No mountains. We took off. I hope you understand. Dean from Grandview. Tapping into my Midwestern roots. There's nothing like a hot, muggy Thursday night in the hometown there and going down to get a dilly bar. So thank you, Dean and Melanie from Grandview. Lots of nice things to say, and I appreciate what you said and your last paragraph. And lastly, we want to thank your wife, Liz. She must be a saint, putting up with all of us visiting your backyard or front porch 5 days a week. Give her a hug and Bijou a snuggle, and we'll do. So a small token of appreciation, a toast to you. Hope you and Liz can enjoy an ice cream treat sometime on us. Have a wonderful summer. Thank you, and you have a wonderful summer too. I love you guys down there in Grandview. The Grandview Greyhounds. Tough basketball program down there, high school. And Jean from Ellensburg. I'm sorry, Jean. Have we Jean? Very wonderful, heartfelt, amazing letter. Jean, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Box delivered by Ken from Kathy in Menlo, Washington. Beautiful card, Kathy. And Kathy wanted to make sure that I had a copy of John McPhee's Annals of the Former World. And McPhee is a hero of mine, many of us, I think. He's still around. He's still living in Princeton, New Jersey. I sent him a fan letter a couple of years ago, maybe. Got a little email back from him. So thank you for the book, Kathy. And then the sea crop is for Mrs. Zentner's garden. I think she will like the results. We are a family business and have been manufacturing this product for almost 20 years. Today it is shipped all over the country and the world. When we were young, we mined and prospected throughout the West. Today we mine the sea to improve the land. So this is from Kathy in Menlo, Washington. Now Liz, from c-crop.com. This episode of Nick from Home brought to you by Sea Crop, Ocean Mineral Concentrate. You gotta love it. I'm not even really sure what I'm holding, but Liz is excited to use it. She said, have you thanked the Sea Crop people yet? Because I want to use it today in my garden. So I got an email from Rick in Federal Way. And Rick says, yeah, I watched yesterday's show. You got to be effing kidding me. Where you showed this thing that you stick on the van. Somebody beat me to my gift. I ordered something from the same company and it's coming to you today. This was yesterday. So this was from, I'm sorry, I can't remember who sent me that. I couldn't find your name, and then I think I didn't make contact with you at some point. But Rick from Federal Way had the same idea, and Rick, I want to share your version of this, and I want to thank you as well. Depending on my mood, I will be slapping this on the van, or I will be slapping this on the van. Thank you, Rick in Federal Way. This will go on the back of the van. This will go on one panel. This will go on the other panel. I don't know, maybe I'll just put them on the van for fun when we drive to Pocatello. That's like an 11-hour drive. We'll see what kind of looks I get. Thank you, Rick in Federal Way. Oscar, thank you. We're going to save yours till tomorrow. You understand why? Thank you, Oscar. And last but not least, with the thank yous, I guess we were both away from the house, Grandpa Carl, when you arrived. Grandpa Carl from Granger, Washington, from the Granger clay pits. Drove about an hour to get up here to Ellensburg with his old pickup, Grandpa Carl. And what did he lean outside of the mudroom? So this is a real pickaxe. I got one just like it, but I don't have one pretty like this, Carl. And you spray painted it with kind of a gold glitter. I don't know if people can see that. So this will be in my office too, Carl, I guess, until the health and safety people tell me I can't have it in my office. But thank you, Carl. You've been a a loyal supporter all these years with ideas and links and other things and invitations to be down at your property to learn with Lydia Steisch of the USGS and others. Thank you very much, Carl. Or should I say Grandpa Carl? Let me check my laptop here quick. I was so busy with my Norley impersonation and other things that I think I want to double check that we're doing okay. The house is empty, nobody's here. Are we good? Are we functional? You're in Boxy McBox. You'll hear a little bit of breeze on occasion, but I don't think it should be too bad. Thank you for the reports, 5x5. Good. Yeah, I was disappointed with the buffering the last couple days. I'll blame. Hello from Warsaw. Hey, thanks for joining us in Poland. That may be a first. I don't know what that was about. I know we had lots going on with, well, if I speculate, it makes me look like an idiot, which I'm not afraid of for sure. But yeah, are you functional, the device 9? That's really the question, isn't it? Okay, good. I still got 4 minutes. I don't think I have anything else. Joy giver, no big deal. When I'm in some sort of argument now, I can just kind of play that card. You don't understand, I'm a joy giver. Aren't you receiving joy right now? I'm a joy giver. Ask these guys, I'm a joy giver. Yeah, you want some? A couple final hellos to folks, and then I need to start concentrating on our program. We will begin in 3 minutes, in case you're waiting. Mark is not impressed with the potato chips. I'm sorry, Mark. On behalf of Lay's, I'd like to apologize to you for this food product. Yeah, I've been up since 4:30, so I'm ready for lunch anyway. Blue Roads, hey, Japan. Siram from Seattle. Thank you for the weather report. Leslie Ann making some coffee. Hello, Im. Nobody. Jane Russell. Yeah, Jason. It's light here early this time of year, as we all know, so Bijou gets up and starts screwing around. We haven't figured that one out yet. Okay, I appreciate you all joining us this morning. I need to take a couple minutes and concentrate. Our program is on cinder cone volcanoes, and we will begin in 2 minutes. Thanks for joining us. Hey now. Well, a pleasant good morning to all of you around the world. Thank you for joining us here live in the backyard. My name is Nick Zentner. I teach at the college here in Ellensburg, Washington, USA. And a toast to you right off the bat for being with us this morning. And I'm particularly excited for this one, primarily because I've learned a lot about cinder cone volcanoes in the last 24 hours. I started yesterday morning. And I only share that because, you know, the internet's such a powerful thing. And I've had a few things kind of stuck in my craw over the last 3 years about this, things that kind of got me interested in the topic. But right off the bat, I should tell you that I really have not done much teaching about cinder cone volcanoes. I've just kind of ignored them, partly because I didn't really understand why they were here. And they're also not the main attraction. The main attraction are these incredible cone volcanoes that are more than 10,000 feet tall. But there are these little mini cones, these little cinder cones. So we have some objectives this morning, some things I feel comfortable with and some others that I don't. What do I feel comfortable with? Well, I know how to tell the difference between a cinder cone volcano and a composite cone volcano. Do you? And if you don't, let me make sure we know what our topic is this morning. Second of all, less confident on why the cinder cones exist where they do. We know some things about the ages of these cones. They're young. These cones are ice age. These cones, all these cinder cones, the topic of this morning is volcanism in the last 2 million years, and in many cases, less than 100,000 years ago. Here in the Pacific Northwest, you know we're here in the Pacific Northwest, so am I going to be going around the world talking about cinder cones? Of course not. I barely know what's going on in Washington. But I do have some things to share with you. Not only on the chalkboard, not only with a bunch of pieces of paper, not only with a prop that I haven't tried, but it's been a while since we've used a food prop. Might as well go back to that. with the extension cord hanging out of the bedroom window here. Got some Cozy Fort slides to share with you, and I thought that was going to be plenty. And then about 2 hours ago, I found some amazing video clips of cinder cones in action. So this might be an extra long one. Strap yourself in. I don't know if we have a time limit or not, do we? Maybe you do. Maybe, oh, I don't know. I only have a half an hour for it. Well, okay, that's fine. But for those of you that have a little time and you want to settle in and get that second cup of coffee and get ready to roll, we got all sorts of stuff to talk about. Okay, that was the introduction. How'd it go? Not sure. Okay. Let's start with this map. Oh, that's dangerous. If you're in distant lands, Ellensburg, Washington is up here off the top of the map. This is Mount Adams, a beautiful stratovolcano. This is Mount Hood, a beautiful stratovolcano. This is Mount St. Helens, a beautiful stratovolcano with its head missing. The upper 1,300 feet was removed on May 18th, 1980, 40 years ago. But all this little chicken scratch, all these little X's, every one of those is a cinder every one of these little X's is a cinder cone volcano. And I've just kind of casually given you a sense, but I'll show you some more professional diagrams to show this is underselling it. There are hundreds of these cinder cone volcanoes. And if you know the drive from, let's say, Portland, let's say you go, so this is Oregon, south of the Columbia River, this is Washington, north of the Columbia River, and one of our boys lives in Portland, so when we visit him, great, then we drive home and we drive Portland, we stay on Interstate 84, Hood River, the Dalles, then cross at Biggs Junction, maybe stop at the Chevron where I can pump my own gas, buy a Big Mac perhaps, and then on to Ellensburg we go. So if you know that drive or other drives on this map, were you aware that all these cinder cone volcanoes were in your field of view as you were driving? I'm not sure that I did. And I first got tipped off to this in the Goldendale area. And there's a medical doctor in Yakima named Tim Melhorn. And I didn't know Tim at all. And he said, hey, I got something I want to ask you about. And I've already talked to some landowners down in Goldendale, and I want to just go down there with you. You got a couple hours? Can I just meet you down there? I'll take you out to lunch, and then we'll start looking at some of these things. And that's easily 5 years ago. So Tim Melhorn, if you're watching, thank you. You got me interested in this topic, and I've since gone down to the Goldendale area a few more times, as we'll see in the Cozy Fort in just a bit. But there's still major questions. And there are concentrations of these young cinder cones. This is part of the Simcoe Mountains volcanic field. So I wrote that purposely small. These are just notes for myself because I don't know this stuff very well yet. This is the Indian Heaven volcanic field. And there's more than cinder cones, but we're just focusing on these little cones. And down around Portland, there's almost 100 of these individual little cinder cones, collectively part of the Boring volcanic field, named after a little town called Boring, Oregon, which is in the suburbs of Portland. And there's plenty of other cinder cones as well. I can't hold it. I want to go to something that's particularly interesting that I learned at a geology meeting last spring in Portland. So a year ago, a little more than a year ago. So this was a regional Geological Society of America meeting in Portland, May 15th to the 17th, 2019. Mostly Oregon geologists reporting on Oregon geology, so I was all ears. Here's my little legal pad where I'm jotting down all these notes. And you know, you listen to some talks, and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but you know, whatever. And then a couple of really bad talks, you know, like this is like the longest 15 minutes of my life. But Richard Conry from Hamilton College and a colleague of Russ Everts, who was a longtime USGS geologic mapper. Richard gave a really amazing talk, and these are my notes from more than a year ago. And I want to show you, I want to translate what this is. This really caught my eye and my ear, and I didn't talk to Richard after the talk. I think I just went on to something else. And I need to follow up on this. I'm giving you this kind of half-baked in my mind. Shout out Dustin Hoffman. From Russ Everts and Richard I forgot his name. Richard Conley? There's an age progression of the cinder cone volcanoes. Oh wait, it includes Indian Heaven. Kind of this wedge bounded by faults. This structure is called the High Cascades Graben. It's a big block of crust that has dropped compared to both sides. And within this structure called the High Cascades Graben, I'm talking about brand new stuff that I basically learned yesterday, so forgive me if this is slightly half-baked. But the thing that really got me excited is if you look at all these little cinder cone volcanoes, which we haven't even discussed yet, but you'll get to it in a second. There's an age progression in millions of years. By studying less than 5 million year old volcanism, just in this little High Cascades Graben, apparently you go from 5 million years old material, cinder cones, to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 million year old cinder cones, to I guess younger than a million. I need to decide how real that is, number one. Did I actually hear it correctly? Number two, what would explain something like this? Why would we be opening the crust if it truly is an extensional story? And I think that's one of my messages, is that these cinder cones are totally different geologically in structure than a huge composite cone or stratovolcano, but I think they also represent something different tectonically. So that was introduction part B to hopefully really get you into this. Let's backtrack now and do some basics, assuming you've never thought about a cinder cone before. He goes to the whiteboard with the breeze picking up. So I've got 3 stratovolcanoes on the chalkboard, or composite cones, same thing. One of the key differences is size. So I think you might have tuned in for a cinder cone volcano discussion and you were imagining a big cone volcano like Rainier, or Adams, or Hood, or Shasta, or Lassen, etc. Those are truly a subduction story. Those are truly a ring of fire story with subducting ocean plate. We'll look in the Cozy Fort in a bit at some of this. We've talked about these guys a bunch, and for good reason. They are the headline. They are the eye-grabbing snow sentinels of the Pacific Northwest. But our topic this morning are these piddly little guys that average about 1,000 feet high instead of 12,013. Actually, Mount Rainier is 14,410. Now, actually, it's... Okay? These cinder cones, on average, are 1,000 feet high. Paracutin in Mexico, I think, got up to 1,200 feet, maybe 1,300 feet. But these are small features. They're cones, but they're different. And one of my messages before I lose it here is that, yes, we can get some cinder cones that are within the Cascades, but we do have dozens and dozens of cinder cones that are not really in the volcanic arc itself. We have cinder cones kind of getting into areas that are not the Ring of Fire. And so this is one of those things that I'm working on right now, but I think we want to visualize normal faults. I think I want to connect each of these little X's with some sort of fault, some sort of individual fault, which is on a much smaller scale than a big subduction zone. Okay? Woo! You doing okay audio-wise? Can I protect you a little more? I'm worried about you. Your mother and I are worried about you. You don't look healthy. So I believe that most of these cinder cones are related to normal fault activity, where you pull the crust apart. Now, it's not truly opening the crust. That's a fissure type thing, and that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that you can associate many of these little cinder cones with these normal faults that have been mapped throughout the area, especially on the walls of this high Cascades Graben. Well, what else is different besides size if we go from this to this? And again, I'm going to hammer this a fair amount this morning, but I want to hammer it because I don't want us to get confused. I don't want us to be talking about cinder cones and having you think about, Mount Baker. No, not what we want. And it even gets more confusing because sometimes you can actually have parasitic cinder cones. You can have a big composite cone and then the lower flanks will have some of these guys like growing like a parasite on the flanks. So another key difference is that the cinder cone is truly made out of cinders. Like the entire thing is made out of particles. These are layers of lava and layers of, the major structure here. But this is truly a pile of cinders, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not really sure what you mean. He goes to the other whiteboard. So here's one of our cinder cones. It's 1,000 feet high on average. And it's made out of cinders, but a geologic word for those cinders is something called scoria, which is kind of a darker version of pumice. This episode of Nick from Home brought to you by Kevin Licious Ice Cream from Weinigers in downtown Ellensburg. You gotta love it. That doesn't sound like ice cream. It's not. I love Kevin Licious ice cream, but I have a bunch of cinders. I'll show you where I collected these yesterday afternoon. God, did I really drive out to a cinder cone to collect these? Nope, I didn't. Okay. But these are what cinder cone volcanoes are composed of. Individual pieces of scoria. And each of these blocks is separate from its neighbor. And each of these blocks is being thrown into the air from an erupting cinder cone. You'll see video of that, amazing video of that, coming soon enough. All right. Back to the whiteboard. Oh, it's a 3-ring circus this morning. So the entire cinder cone is a pile of this loose cinder. And you have an angle of repose. You might have to Google that if you're not familiar with that phrase. Shout out Wallace Stegner, my favorite author. He's not watching. He's not with us anymore. Steep slopes. Have you hiked up a cinder cone before? It's a workout. We'll see that in the video clips as well. And yes, there is usually, not always, but usually some sort of circular crater at the top. And you're like, huh? I thought it was just a pile of stuff. Well, it is a pile of stuff. A cinder cone is a pile of cinders, scoria clasts, but it's so explosive towards the top that occasionally, quite often, you form this kind of summit crater so that there's actually a circular depression at the top that you can hike down into, which again, we will do with this attractive couple in Northern California. That sounded creepy. Where's my van thing? All right. Okay. So, I think we can all follow what I'm saying, but yet I had an idea last night and I asked Liz permission. And she said, I think it'll take 5 minutes. And I'm like, she said, do you want to test it out? And I'm like, no, we'll just try it. So the few times I have discussed a cinder cone volcano, I have talked to my 19-year-old students and said, oh, it's just kind of like a hot air popcorn popper. And a bunch of them are like, what? It's like, well, back in the day, we didn't have microwaves. And so, you want to make a cinder cone? This episode of Nick from Home brought to you by Orville Redenbacher's Gourmet Popping Corn. Talk about the 1980s. And Liz still eats some of this, without butter and stuff, whatever. That's not how I roll, but so she pops her little kernels in her. I didn't realize it was actually an official Orville Redenbacher's hot air popper. All right. So she said, take some of these. I said, do I need oil? She said, no, okay. So she says, measure it out. It's like, no. I'm a man of, I'm a joy giver. Okay, so we got, and you know what we're gonna do? Patrick, you know what we're gonna do? Okay, there's no on-off switch, so I'm just gonna plug this thing in and we'll see how long it takes for us to have cinders come out of out of the ground. This is kind of our ground surface, and we're gonna send these cinders out of the ground. This is a bunch of effort for not much, but at least it's fun. Ready? I'll make the ground surface like right here. So this, so something's already happening. Evelyn, what's about to, I don't know what's happening, Evelyn. 5 minutes? Oh, it's getting hot. Oh, I can smell it. Now, these are gas-charged magmas, and we're not interacting with groundwater particularly. We'll talk about the difference between a tuff cone and a spatter cone and a cinder cone in the Cozy Fort. But for right now, we just have our magmas that are gas charged. There's a lot of gases in the magma, and due to particular requirements that I don't totally understand, you have one vent, you have one eruption that I think only takes a few weeks or maybe a couple of months at the most. I think these cinder cones, these cinder cones are representing one event from one vent. Yeah, baby. See if I can catch one. Oh, we got cinder. This episode of Nick from Home. I got my safety goggles on. Come on. All right. I think you get the idea. I'm wasting your time now, but it's... Maybe one will fly into your living room. Oh, that went right over you. I'd like you to remember this when you think of a cinder cone being active and when you watch the video that we have a little bit later on. Okay. Yes, I have bare feet. Yes, those seeds are hot. I'll gut through it. What a clown! Who is this clown? What are you watching? Who is this? Okay, that is not the story with these composite cones. Totally different scale, totally different way to build those composite cones or stratovolcanoes from the base. But cinder cones we just talked about, and I think of cinder cones then as a simple structure. I'm going to repeat because you maybe were distracted. And why wouldn't you? There's one vent. There's one eruption. According to the stuff I read, we're talking about weeks of activity, of popcorn kernels flying through the air and piling up, and the angle of repose setting the angle for the slopes of that cinder cone, particularly explosive at the top, just like our hot air popper, and after a few months, you're done. And there it sits. And in the case of Beacon Rock, which some of you might know in the Columbia River Gorge, the cinder cone has been swept clean except for the volcanic neck, that Beacon Rock State Park on the Washington side. 58,000 years old, I think. But many of these other X's are truly beautiful, intact cinder cones, as you'll see in the visuals, that really haven't been disturbed much at all. So they are young. Other cases, we have cinder cones that are trying to form underneath glaciers, especially in the Indian Heaven volcanic field. We've got alpine ice and some of the hot popcorn kind of trying to come up through, and you're forming tufas and other kinds of structures that I haven't learned a whole lot about. But have we kind of done our first objective, our first couple of objectives? We're making sure we're talking about 1,000 foot high piles of cinders as opposed to something larger. Okay. I showed you this once before. I used to teach a field class down in Eastern California, and so here's an example of how perfect these cinder cones are. And many of these X's on the map are just like this. Many of them covered in a forest cover, and you don't see them very well. But if you whip out the LiDAR skills, you can actually get to some of this. In the case of the Owens Valley, this is the Owens Valley Fault that's actually cutting this thing, so we'd have our students out here. So I've spent, I don't know, I guess 15 years of mapping this cinder cone volcano with students every year. So at least down there, I have a good sense of what I'm talking about. But up here in the Northwest, not as much, ironically. There are some wonderful vignettes on different parts of Western Washington geology. This by Dave Tucker. I think I've shared this with you once before. He's got a particularly good section on Beacon Rock where we do have this cinder cone that's been absolutely devastated by Missoula floods. So that's another concept. Think of these cinder cones in the Northwest as happening during the Ice Age. And so some of the cinder cones are actually subjected to all the cinders being swept downstream if you have a Missoula flood or multiple Missoula floods coming right over the cinder cone, which is the case for Beacon Rock. Other resources just while I'm at it. So this is my textbook from the volcanology class that I took from Bill Hackett in Idaho State University, and we did much of the class in the field at Craters of the Moon, so I'll be talking about this again tomorrow. Kings Bowl, Yellowstone itself, we went up there 3 different weekends, and this was our textbook, kind of a standard textbook for advanced volcanology students, and I've barely cracked the thing open since 1987, but that exists. And Wes Hildreth has done the lion's share of the mapping here, especially in the Washington side, and another USGS geologist. So when I went down to Goldendale and got real curious about all these blocks of things sitting loose on the ground in the Goldendale area, I said, I sent Wes an email. I said, hey, I heard you did some mapping. So he sent me this, and there are 3 very detailed geologic maps, much of which are on the Yakima Nation land. He got some permission to get on there, and he's got a whole booklet with text to put some of this together. Did I want to show you something in here? Oh, I did. Yeah, hang on, Patrick. So I'm intrigued by this. So I kind of mentioned this structure, which I'm just starting to learn about. He's got some kind of High Cascades Graben with Jefferson, a stratovolcano, and then he's got that structure, Mount Hood, crossing the Columbia. That's Adams, that's Goat Rocks volcano, and this is coming up towards White Pass. So there's much to learn from Wes Hildreth. I think he's retired now, but his work and many others as well. Let's keep the pace going the best we can. It's 9:30 already. I printed these out. I must still use them. So we know we're speaking the same language, aren't we? That we're not talking about any of these guys today. This is my standard shtick. I'm sure you've seen it if you've seen anything that I've done over the years. 3 kinds of volcanoes in the middle of the oceans, on the coasts, and in the continents. I'm not talking about any of these this morning. I'm talking about category number 4, which is basically basaltic material. That's what the scoria is made out of. But we're not talking about these big, broad shield volcanoes. We're talking about much smaller structures called cinder cones. So before I do the whiteboard thing, this is what I was kind of reading before. You can Google this just as well as I can, you know, probably better. Now we start thinking about specific places in the Northwest, and I was a rookie. It's like I've heard of Tum Tum Mountain. People ask about Tum Tum Mountain. So I Googled Tum Tum, did what I could. Okay, it's a little bit taller than it should be, but maybe it's a cinder cone. Uh-oh, there's a big, beautiful conical point to it. That's maybe not a vote for a cinder cone, because usually there's that summit crater. This is Tum Tum, which is south of St. Helens. But it turns out Tum Tum Mountain in southwestern Washington is not a cinder cone. It's made out of dacite lava, much similar to the lava dome that's inside of the St. Helens crater. And there's a guess that I found on Google. So Tum Tum, not our topic. Oh, how about Lava Butte? Yes. This is right off of US 97. This is just south of the town of Bend, Oregon. This is a classic example. And in fact, in the summer, you can drive your family right to the top. That's the road circling up to the top of Lava Butte. I don't care for the name personally. Lava Butte is confusing when we realize that these cinder cones are just a pile of cinders, scorioblasts basically. But notice there's lavas as well, and we've got an animation to look at how the lavas, the basaltic lavas, are tied to this. Before I forget, German chocolate cake, Columbia River flood basalts, not our topic. No connection. So I know we've talked about, well, yeah. And how many of these live streams have we looked at this and looked at the incredible flood basalt 16 million years ago? And it is basalt. No connection. A total coincidence. Because we've got these vents coming to the surface and making up these piles of cinders. Yes, they're basaltic, but remember, we're younger than 2 million years in these little piles. We don't have cinder cones that are from the flood basalt story. That's fissures opening up and having these incredible orange, syrupy-like things flooding the landscape. Spiral Butte, are you from the Yakima area? Do you know Rimrock on your way up to White Pass? I thought maybe that was a cinder cone volcano. It is not. Too tall, number one. It's also made out of a specific kind of lava. So it's got a beautiful cone pattern, but you can see how confusing this can be unless you really dig down. Now, just Googling cinder cone and clicking on images, you get, this is maybe from the San Francisco Peaks area. Maybe this is Sunset Crater down in northern Arizona. Maybe. Here's probably the most perfect cinder cone that I kept running into last night on the laptop. This is in Mount Lassen National Park, and it's truly just called Cinder Cone, I believe. That's the place name, Cinder Cone itself. And we will visit this with the attractive couple. Creepy. Erupted 1650 AD. What? We had an active volcanic cinder cone event in the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, like 150 years before Lewis and Clark? Apparently. Okay. Are we doing okay? As usual, kind of meandering, scattered-wise, but we'll eventually get to the teaching points that we'll get to. And yes, there are some cinder cones in craters of the moon, but we're saving those for tomorrow. Patrick says we're good. That's all I need to see. Okay. We may be going to the Cozy Fort pretty soon. But I'm just remembering what I had here. So this, we'll look at this in the Cozy Fort as well. But here is a more detailed map of what I was showing you on the chalkboard. Every black dot is a cinder cone. Isn't that amazing? Are you aware of this and what story they tell? So Russ Efforts and Richard Conry are we opening up more down here than we are here? Is this somehow tied to the clockwise rotation? He asks himself this on a live stream and he doesn't know the answer. It's not Third Person Thursday, but Nick Zentner does not know. Now, if you go down to Central Oregon, can you see that we have an intimate association between, this is from Dan Coe, Washington Geological Survey, or maybe Dogami in Oregon, I'm not sure, sorry. Individual cinder cones, just like we talked about, a bunch of popcorn piled up, but then also basalt, like fluid lava from the same vent. So I think that's still on my list. Like what's going on in the vent or in the upper part of the magma chamber to have both this fluid stuff and the popcorn coming up at the same time? And you're like, well, that's why I tuned in. Aren't you going to tell me? Aren't you the so-called expert? No. Are you the guy on TV there? Oh, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, my wife watches your program on the TV there. Oh, your wife does? Yeah, Shirley, hey, what's the name of that program? This Net on the Ropes? Yeah, Net on the Ropes. Yeah, Net on the Ropes, that's what it is. So you've been down to Richardson Ranch there, Madras? Thunder Eggs? No, sir, I have not. Surely, this guy calls himself an expert and he hasn't even been to Richardson's? Son, you call yourself an expert? Oh, I don't know. You haven't been to Richardson's. Shirley, why do you watch this clown? Certified smart person. He has been to Richardson's. And seen. All right. So the magic of LiDAR, as we'll go to in the Cozy Fort, and I promise that's coming within 3 minutes because the wind's picking up. You can find all sorts of volcanic structures, lava flows that were totally buried in the national forests. And it's exciting to many of us to see that open up. Okay, the rest, I do have the rest in the Cozy Fort. Okay, we're going in. We're going in. We're going to be going in for a while. We will do some live Q&A, but this is going to be an extra long session in the Cozy Fort. I hope you're okay for it, or I hope you're okay with it. We do have a high wind warning this afternoon, but that's not supposed to start for a couple hours, so yeah. I already lost some things in the yard. I'll find them. So I showed you this briefly last time, and here's just kind of a cartoonish Cascade story. But you'll notice I do have the Boring Volcanics and the Simcoe Volcanics, and without knowing anything, I thought maybe they were offshoots of the Cascades, and maybe they are. But you heard what I mentioned. We might want to think of normal faults instead. I found this old, I don't know if this is a thesis or who Jeff Clayton was or is, but in 1980 he mapped Tumac Mountain, which is up by White Pass. Let me show you an old school looking map. This is back in my vintage now. Back in my day. So, I'm sorry, what did I say? Jeff Clayton. So he's got, this is a cinder cone, Tumac Mountain, for instance. I'm not flipping you off. So this is pretty close to White Pass. So we're quite a ways north. We're way up here now with Tumac Mountain. So just for those of you that know specific places in the Washington Cascades, let's say, it's not all one story. Okay, am I stalling? Do I not want to go in the Cozy Fort? Of course I do. We're going in. maybe I don't. So, open question to, maybe we have a few geologists watching who know the answer. Why the clockwise rotation, we're stuck here, oh, here we go. So that has been explaining so much, seismically, for instance, but is this clockwise rotation somehow creating a fault network that then somehow gets very young mafic magmas to the surface, not just in the Cascades, but east of the Cascades, and even west of the true trend of the Cascades? That's what I'm going to try to work on maybe this summer. You like that? You throw in the word maybe. Nobody's going to pin me down. Okay, we're going into the Cozy Fort. Yeah, live streams. Are we doing any more? Yeah, maybe. Oh, what, next week? Maybe. Next month? Maybe. Daddy's on fumes. Daddy needs a break. Okay. Stepping on popcorn, bare feet, keeps me awake. We're going into the Cozy Fort to look at photos, maps, and some amazing video clips. Muffler boy. We have 1,200 people. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Come on now, come on now. Are we going inside? We'll try this for a while, but we might have to go inside. Police blotter. Police report to greenhouse in Ellensburg. Geologist impaled. High winds, ladder through his kidney. Larry the Ladder. All right. Thank you for your patience. I'm really excited to show some of this to you. I think you'll enjoy it. We start with a little slideshow. It'll go fast because I got more than just this to share with you. And we start like we did last time. Da, 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 bum, 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 bum. Thank you, Pierre, artist in Boston. So, okay, we got some volcanoes to talk about. Sweet. Where are we going? Oh, Mount St. Helens? No, not the topic today. This is what Mount St. Helens looked like in 1972, 8 years before it exploded or erupted. There's Mount St. Helens after 1980. Not the topic today. Not the topic today. Get off of it. Mount St. Helens, not our topic. Oh, the Ring of Fire? Yeah, I guess. I mean, people love that concept, the Ring of Fire. And the Ring of Fire does represent ocean plate subduction. God dang it, hang on. I can't handle the rattling. I'm going to have to live with it because I'm going to lose the Cozy Fort otherwise. Okay. So, yes, we're not talking about any of these guys. No, beautiful photo from Tom Foster. Not talking about Rainier. Not talking about St. Helens. Not talking about Adams. Those are the huge stratovolcanoes. Not talking about Mazama. Now that's explosive, and there's pumice, and there's light-colored ash. But that's not our story with the cinder cones. Would we please get to the cinder cones? Well, that's in Lassen Park, but that's not a cinder cone. Lassen, stratovolcano, exploded in 1915. It made incredible eruptions. We can't tie the cinder cones necessarily with a subduction zone, although some of them may be tied to it. Instead, we're looking to the yellow now. It's calm, hang on. There's more to the story is the point. There's more to the story, and I'm just starting to work on the story. So you go to Google and you find old school images like this. Cinder cone, and corresponding lava flow. Cinder cone, lava butte, south of Bend. We've already seen these, but now we're going to expand our look. We've seen it. Pile of cinders, popcorn. Now, did I collect my cinders at a cinder cone volcano yesterday? No, I just took the scenic route home from school and said, where can I find some of those cinders? They're used in landscaping all over the Pacific Northwest, if you're unaware. You know, they mine cinder cone volcanoes, literally, and sell it for landscaping. So this is next to the Albertsons grocery store in Ellensburg. And my dad used to coach track and field. And back in the 1950s and 60s, many of the running tracks, maybe all the running tracks, were cinder tracks. If you're a track fan, you remember those days. I think this is the last Olympics that had a cinder track, if I remember right, 1964 possibly. So this is the name of the game for the rest of our time in the Cozy Fort. Basaltic rock that has lots of vesicles, lots of area. Now, we're not talking about Menan Buttes. We're doing that tomorrow. Beautiful image from the Snake River Plain. This is more tied to what's going on at Craters of the Moon. So spatter cone. Wait a minute. I mislabeled that. I'm sorry. This is called a tough cone. I'm sorry. I was moving too fast this morning with my PowerPoint. Ignore the word spatter here. This is a tough cone. We'll discuss Menan Buttes and tough cones tomorrow. I did spend one trip in 1993 in the Galapagos. I was moonlighting as a tour guide, and we did look at beautiful spatter cones. I don't remember which island this is. Somebody probably knows. And what an amazing place to look at spatter cones. So tough cones in eastern Idaho at Menan Buttes, spatter cones in the Galapagos. Each of those have a specific story, unrelated, not related to our cinder cone discussion today. Just trying to give you the sense that the cinder cones and the accompanying fluid lava flows are our topic. Back to Lava Butte in Central Oregon. If one cinder cone is brought up more than others to me, and it's this one. Just because of the accessibility, I think. And again, if we're in the Newberry volcano area, there's about every kind of volcanic story possible, from explosive supervolcano to cinder cone to shield. I mean, that Newberry area south of Bend is an amazing place. This is the cinder cone that I mentioned to you that I know very well because of the 20 years of teaching a field course. And this was a one-day project. Oftentimes it was day one. And it was, 100-degree air temperature, and it's probably 120 degrees on top of the cinder cone in the afternoon. I mean, it was a brutal way to start our course, and we'd have people crying, and I hate you, Ned Zentner, and all that stuff. Ned Zinger. Well, guess who was down in northern Arizona last summer and emailed me some photos last night? Sauber, no big deal. And I Googled that this particular cinder cone in northern Arizona, part of the San Francisco volcanic field, last erupted just over a couple of months in the year 1085 AD. Another Sauber shot from northern Arizona. Thank you, Sauber, for the photos. Paracutine, have you heard of it? A cinder cone volcano that grew out of nothing, grew out in the middle of somebody's cornfield, and was a very well-studied cinder cone volcano back in 1943. Back to the Pacific Northwest, here's a map of British Columbia. I know almost nothing, but do you notice the red circles are cinder cone volcanoes, presumably Ice Age, with accompanying fluid basalt lavas from the vents. I've got some work to do up in British Columbia. If you're watching from up there, you probably have details. Apparently, there's a hot spot associated with the Anaheim story, and things get progressively older as you get away from where the hot spot is located. No idea from me currently. Now, more detailed maps and a better chance for you to look at these West Hildreth USGS maps. And I'll give you just a second to soak this one in. I mean, I've had people email about a volcano near Greenwater, which is almost to Tacoma. I'm like, I don't think there's an active volcano near Greenwater. Well, it turns out there is a cinder cone there. I didn't realize it. It's off the north edge of the map, by the way. And Hildreth, I think these are Hildreth's maps. Forgive me if they're not. We can do the same thing as we go down to Oregon. Look at all of the cinder cones. Isn't that amazing? Were you aware of the sheer number of these things? Here's a beautiful LiDAR image south of Bend, Oregon, north of Lapine, just to give you a sense of the dozens and dozens of these cinder cone volcanoes. It's a story that I've totally ignored until now, and I'm looking forward to learning more. Now, if you're a specialist, good for you, but you're ahead of me. I'm hoping to catch up to you. If we go down to Crater Lake National Park, otherwise known as Mazama, again, that's the national park. That's what everybody goes to visit. But again, every black dot is a cinder cone, or at least a young quaternary vent of some sort. Now we're into Northern California. I barely know that area at all, but Shasta, stratovolcano, a bunch of cinder cones, and then finally Lassen, also in Northern California, same idea. So I'm looking forward to teasing out some major stories that can be backed up with good field observation involving this quaternary volcanism. Now, I can even use my office, which I showed you on Tuesday, and next to my pennant saying, go Wisconsin, on Wisconsin, and, you know, now you daydream and you start looking carefully at this map, and it's like, I never even noticed. Look at all these stars in southwestern Washington. Every star is a cinder cone. It's kind of amazing what you kind of train your eyes to look for. So places like this, which don't look very impressive geologically, just a bunch of clear cuts and a bunch of national forest land perhaps, but the concept that I want you to get a sense for in southern Washington is that there's all sorts of cinder cones buried in the trees, essentially. And as you go over Indian Heaven volcanic, this is south of St. Helens. We're kind of by Cougar, I guess. What's the other one called there? Rifle Lake, maybe? So this is an image. You're like, oh, I guess there's some lavas in there. And then you give it to Dan Coe, and he says, well, let me get some LiDAR there. Let me use some artistic shading, and we can tease out the West Crater lava flows that are quaternary in age. Back down, we're skipping around, sorry. But now I'm just showing you the power of LiDAR to kind of bring out many of these stories with these new computer techniques. Not a particularly attractive map, but one you can Google to look at almost 100, and each of them named, by the way, volcanic vents of the boring volcanic field in an urban area. This is the Portland area. And so many that are watching from Portland, they know very well that Mount Tabor and bunch of these other locations. I mean, right by the freeway. Here's that. I always get confused. I'm driving to Portland. I'm on 84, and then like things split to 205. I'm like, am I in the right lane? Am I going to Portland? I don't know why I'm confused there. Maybe the lane's kind of. I think you go on to 205 there, and you actually veer north, even though you're getting onto something that's going south. Whatever. What's the old guy talking about? Getting confused. The point is there's a big cinder cone right there. Is this Rocky Butte? And if you look at just a survey of the boring volcanics and look at the ages from brand new going back to 1 million years old, 2 million years old, 3 million years, you can see how many of these cones have been active in the last, 1.5 million years. And so Paul Hammond, who I've talked about before, longtime Portland State geology professor and one of the experts, maybe the expert in southern Washington volcanism, has not published this, but he kind of came up with a little scenario like, what would happen if Mount Tabor started erupting as a cinder cone? Like, this is not a system that's totally dead. And so instead of thinking about St. Helens or Hood doing their thing, you can see Hood there in the distance, more than 10,000 feet elevation, I think. Much closer to town, in fact, right at the Mount Tabor neighborhood. I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow. Paul is not either, but he's kind of put together a little scenario about what that would be like if that cinder cone started popping popcorn again. Now, to Goldendale, do you remember where I first discovered this whole cinder cone scene? Goldendale, Washington, the Chevron and the McDonald's, that's where we always stop. And I met with Ray Foisey and Steve. When was that, you guys? Was that last summer? I guess it was last summer. So I met him in the McDonald's parking lot. That's usually where I meet people. Jim O'Connor and Charlie are just, I'll meet you in the McDonald's parking lot. And then we'll carpool from there. Well, Ray Foisey from Yakima, amateur geologist, longtime school district superintendent or principal, he took the time the night before, just went into his gazetteer and took out his orange highlighting pen. He said, well, yeah, we're going to go to one of these cinder cones that I made arrangements with, but Nick, there's an incredible number of these cinder cones just in the Goldendale area. This is the Simcoe Mountain volcanic field. And he just did a little arithmetic in the margin of his gazetteer and came up with 74 cinder cones just in the Goldendale area, each of them with a little name, or some of them with a name, like such and such butte, hill, etc. And these folks allowed us to take a peek, so they have school groups that regularly contact them and want to do a little field trip to look on the inside of a cinder cone volcano. And they're quarrying this for landscaping purposes, Bishop Rock, Red Rock. And the real attraction in that cinder cone, and I assume many of the cinder cones, maybe in the boring volcanics as well, or the Indian Heavens, are these little inclusions of olivine, which is like a xenolith of material that came up from mantle material. So that's a whole nother story, where if you go to the Big Island of Hawaii, you can find some of these olivine clasts. So there's plenty to sink your teeth into here geologically. And again, I'm just scratching the surface. Here's a look ahead to tomorrow. Pierre wants you to come back tomorrow morning. Yes? Maybe? Sure? No sound on this. I like the cinder cones there, Pierre. Talented guy. PierreGustafson.com. Okay, so that until this morning I thought was going to be the Cozy Fort, but then I just thought, I went on YouTube, I started looking around, there must be some stuff. Okay, well there is. Some with sound, some with not. This has got a really obnoxious, I don't know, is this a real lady or a computer voice? But their animation is excellent. Cinder cone volcanoes, not only talking about cinder cones forming, but also the lavas that I think are also an interesting part of the story.
Cinder cones consist of pyroclastic material that has settled out in a cone near a volcanic vent.
Yes?
A cinder cone is built as pyroclasts are ejected into the atmosphere and rain down around the volcanic vent. The larger, heavier pyroclasts settle close to the vent, and the smaller, lighter material settles farther away. Lava flows are also associated with cinder cones. The lava is too heavy to flow over the top of the growing cinder cone. Instead, it flows beneath it, pushing the pyroclasts out of the way. The pyroclasts accumulate around the vent and settle at the angle of repose, forming a cinder cone. Much of the original lava flow is buried by the pyroclasts.
Obnoxious voice, but I think they did a great job with the animation here. A great job. And then you're like, okay, I guess that's what it looks like, but does it really look like that? Okay, well, here's my YouTube tip of the day. Are you aware of this cat? Martin, I'm going to say Wrightsy. I don't know how to pronounce that. Martin, I'll just call him Martin. He has an amazing YouTube channel. I'm not exaggerating now. He travels the world, apparently, I don't know anything about this guy. Travels the world and gets the most amazing footage of erupting volcanoes. So here's Krakatoa at night. It's been watched 13 million times. And in this case, I'm going to give him a thumbs up right now. I'm so pleased that 13 million people have found this one, including sound. Now there are different kinds of cones. I'm not saying this is a perfect cinder cone, but I like the look of those cinders rolling down the flanks. I'm gonna do a couple more. So I see the cinder cone police here, and you're like, that's not a cinder cone. I don't know what you're doing. Don't do that. It's not a. Yes, there's many different classifications, and I just want to share his channel, number one, and give us the sense of these steep slopes and this red hot material, and whether we're into spatter or tough or something else or some other category I don't even know about. Fuego volcano. I don't even know where that is. Is that Central America? This is not animated, this is real. Look at those slopes. Look at that red hot popcorn coming down the flanks. That's what we do want with the cinder cone. I assume this is not slow motion, this is real time. God dang. Guatemala, thank you, Craig. Not slow motion. And real sound, I think. I'll give you, oh, shit. So he's a fair distance away, right? So those have to be bigger than our little cinder cones in the Kevin Licious jar. And yet, I think it's still helpful. Here's one more. I literally couldn't stop with his channel. Thumbs up. Give him a big thumbs up and subscribe down below. I've already subscribed. This is Pacaya. Oh, also in Guatemala. Erupted in March of 2018. Filmed in real time. Strombolian eruptions with lava flow, illuminated steam. I'd like to know this guy's backstory. This is 2 minutes. I might show you the whole thing. Why not? It's the sound that gets me. I don't know about you. Oh yeah, baby. Give me some of that. Oh. I can't believe it. All right. Wow. Martin, nice job. Yeah. Cinder Cone, the actual place called Cinder Cone, Lassen Volcanic National Park. This is from a YouTube channel called Mountain Top Adventures. This is a couple that I guess just kind of do full-time RV living, and they are filming themselves, and I have no idea if they're making it work financially just by doing this, but I thought this was an interesting hike with them, hiking up some cinders, and they're also going to go down into the summit crater of a cinder cone in the Pacific Northwest, Northern California. Let's do it. All right. Get to it.
Holy crap, guys. We're getting ready to hike this.
Up the giant anthill.
It really does look like an anthill. It's huge.
Look at that. Look at that symmetry. That's amazing. I'm talking about the cinder cone. Knock it off.
All right, this is where the journey begins. Cinder Cone Volcano. This is where the fun starts.
All the way up.
To the top.
Yeah. Just like walking at Albertsons. I'm not into the music necessarily, but yeah, much of it's not red because if you have an exposed inner part of the cone, it's kind of a true basaltic look. So there's kind of a deep red weathered surface, but there's other parts where it's, I'm sorry.
Here we go.
Going down into the summit crater.
It's cool and scary all at the same time.
All right, I've had it with that music, but it's a nice footage of hiking on a cinder cone. I threw this in just because the Paracutin story is really amazing in the Colima district. We have many people from the Colima area of Mexico living here in our area, and it's been a real joy to visit with many of them and get to know them. And so I feel a special connection to this. Some footage from 1943 in Colima. Let's crank this. This is better music in my opinion.
Escuchen este corrido que traigo de Michoacán, de un pueblito conocido en donde nace un volcán. Es Parangaricutiro, antes llamado San Juan.
The church overrun with some of the lava.
De febrero, fecha que no he de olvidar, un campesino ranchero a su parcela fue a arar y en el surco del yuntero un agujerito humear. Aquel humo iba creciendo y Dionisio se asombró. Para el pueblo fue corriendo y a todos les avisó que su tierra estaba ardiendo, pero nadie le creyó. Hasta que los ciertos vieron.
So just to review, this is the place that had a cornfield, truly a cornfield. And this thing grew in the matter of months or maybe a couple of years, but there was, I'm sure there's other cinder cones nearby, but to have this cornfield and have this thing start to develop in the middle of a cornfield, that captures many people's imagination that way. And I just read from somebody that, maybe it was Matt, that said there is footage of this from 1943. I didn't find that, but maybe you could find that on well. So you can see how standard this cinder cone looks. The slopes, the cinders, the summit crater in many cases, in many different countries, including, this is a website that I saw somebody had in the live chat this morning, I think, or I don't know where I saw this, but I don't know, can I scroll? This is in Japan, obviously know nothing. Uh-oh. I'm gonna try to scroll backhanded here. But we're in Japan and we have cinder cones. So look at that. What's going on there? What's that thing going up the side that's so perfect? Is that a fence or something? Or can't be a road? So this is a global story that I'm just starting to learn about, and maybe you as well. Another website, just to scroll a little bit if I can. If you're in the Portland area, there's an interesting little post here on OregonHikers.org. A bunch of boring volcanics. Of course, you have to start with dealing why it's called boring, and then I'm just scrolling through names in the Portland area of cinder cones that fit the description of our topic this morning, even though many have, subdivisions on it and city parks, and so it's one of those that I don't think is widely communicated, sometimes because of the exposure, sometimes because of the modest nature of these cones. But I'm sufficiently pumped up about it. That's it. Thank you for, 10:15. All right. I already said it was going to be long. Let's do some live Q&A. Let's see how much of the papers are still here. Thank you for staying with us this long. We still have more than 1,000 people watching. That's a testament to your attention span. Cozy Fort by Steve. Steve, I was afraid to put your art piece out here today. I didn't want it to get blown over. I hope you understand. Okay, if you're new to us, we do a little uppercase, caps lock, and and then your host has trouble scrolling, and it'd be great. I'm gonna pop this chat out like a boss, right between the eyes, and I will try my best to share some comments and possibly try to answer a couple of questions. Fred, I think Popo, I can't pronounce that, Popo outside of Mexico City. Hang on. I believe Popo is a straight up stratovolcano and not a composite cone. There's cinder cones in Michigan. Are you serious? That doesn't make any sense to me, especially if, well, they can't be quaternary, right? They can't be like fresh ones like these. Paul Butte, Matt is talking about. Are there any indications or signs of a completely new cinder cone that might be made in the Pacific Northwest? Thank you for the question, 101 Rotary Power. I had a guy come up at that meeting, this meeting here. I still have his email. He says, I shouldn't even share it now because I can't remember. Near Hood River, he said, this thing's mapped as a landslide, but I think it's a brand new cinder cone, like an unrecognized cinder cone. And I haven't followed up on that. But indications or signs of a completely new cinder cone. All I can say is the Cascade Volcano Observatory is doing some very careful monitoring of all the seismicity, tying certain signatures of seismic activity with magma systems and other signatures of seismic noise with tectonic motion, like on faults, etc. And so if there was magma heading towards a new vent that was mafic and about to add to a cinder cone, I don't really know, but I guess we have enough instrumentation to anticipate that. Like we do when we have new magma moving beneath one of the stratovolcanoes. M. Richardson, what is volcanic ash produced by? Is it rock, organics, or something else? Thanks for the question, M. Richardson. Oh, from Richardson Ranch? Oh, so-called expert? Yeah, that's net on the ropes, hasn't been there. I would think of volcanic ash as a big block of lava rock that got blown up by dynamite. It's really just a size thing. You get the particle, you blow up a piece of volcanic rock down to fine consistency of kitchen flour, volcanic ash. So generally, there's not a whole lot of volcanic ash with these cinder cones. We have the cinders, and even though there's a variation in the size of these cinders, it's remarkably consistent, I would say. Just from my experience with that cinder cone down in Big Pine, California, there's kind of a certain size distribution of most of these clasts, and the whole cinder cone is made out of stuff like this. Not typically tons of big blocks, not typically a bunch of volcanic ash, finer stuff. So why is that? Was there a bunch of volcanic ash that got blown downwind and it's just gone? It's definitely not in the cone. So I would not think of volcanic ash as being organic or something else. I would just think about explosions getting stuff down to kitchen flour. The device 9, are cinder cones this common in other parts of the country? I can't imagine they are. I think to get the cinder cones like we've been talking about here, we need them to be new, and we need a network of faults, as I understand it currently. So the American West is ripe for that. And we need magma systems. We need to be, I guess we do need to be next to a subduction zone so we have some magma systems. And now that I say that, I think of northern Arizona. So, good question. I don't have much of an answer. Why the height limit? Interesting question, ATS. I don't know. What do you think? Why don't cinder cones, if they're just cinders coming out of a vent, let's say they go 4 months instead of 2 months, why wouldn't we get a twice as high cinder cone? I think there's some basic physics about the slope that we're maintaining. We keep piling things up. Can we use a simple rule that with each additional week of eruption of the cinders, it's going to be X number of feet higher? Are the height of cinder cones directly proportional to the duration of the event? I don't know. But I do find it interesting that so many of them have a uniform height, give or take, and a similar look. And up until this thing that caught my eye, I assumed that all of these, hundreds and hundreds of cinder cones were all kind of about the same age-ish. But if there's these kinds of progressions, I'm particularly interested. How long do they erupt once they start? I'm sure there's plenty of variability, but I was surprised by many of the reports I just scanned yesterday that this is one vent and we're not talking about thousands of years. Like it's less than a year, apparently, for one cinder cone. Now, I'd love to be proven wrong with that, and I, to be honest, don't even know how they can say that. Maybe they have... Do they have trees that they can count rings on that are growing on top? I don't know how you can say that, but apparently they're short-lived events. Months. Gavin, if the clockwise rotation is the case of the cylinder volcanoes, can we... Gavin, age 11. If clockwise is the case of the cylindrical volcanoes, can we find any volcanoes in the Pacific Ocean, providing the theory is correct? Interesting question, Gavin. I don't, well, first of all, we haven't mapped much of the ocean floors of the world, so I suppose anything's possible. I don't know of any cinder cones, Gavin, that have been found at the bottom of the oceans. It is basalt down there, so the kind of volcanic rock is correct. But I don't see how we can pop some popcorn if there's water sitting on top of the vent. Because these cinders are truly falling through the air. That's why I did the popcorn thing. All the popcorn is in Liz's garden. So this is a pretty good analogy. We'll see tomorrow in Craters of the Moon, there are some cinder cones that are lopsided because the wind was so strong across the Snake River Plain. I'm giving away tomorrow now. But you've got a bunch of cinders being blown downwind like these popcorn. Like I had to walk 6 paces to get the nearest popcorn kernels, and yet they fell right here by the vent. Kind of fun. Scrolling down to fresh, we're going to do a few more and I think we're done. Mauna Loa is a shield volcano high on the Big Island of Hawaii, but there are many parasitic cinder cones there. Diamond Head on Oahu is a tuff cone, different than a cinder cone, but similar. We'll talk about tuff cones tomorrow. Scrolling back from fresh. How does heavy lava at the bottom not pull the cinders away with it? Well, that's interesting as well. I was interested in their animation showing, did they show that lava, the fluid lava, came late? I think they did, didn't they? They built their popcorn pile, and then they said the lava can't come out of the top of the cinder cone because it's more dense or something. And it was like flowing out from underneath. We, on that field trip that I was telling you about to California, we always had a lunch stop in Bend as we're driving our first day down from Ellensburg. And then we would stop just to walk off lunch at Lava Butte. And we wouldn't drive to the top. We'd walk out onto the flat lavas and then we'd have everybody, it was like a class, our first little class discussion. We'd be standing at the viewpoint. And I remember I would always ask the students, well, which do you think is older, the cone of cinders or the lava flows? And I didn't even know the answer. Every year I'd go, I should really look that up. I never did. But we'd have students who would observe. It was a worthwhile exercise because they were turning to kind of reason and observe. And some would say, well, obviously the lava's at the bottom, so that's the oldest. And then the cinder cone piled up. And then some would kind of be gutsy. Like, no, it was day one. Nobody knew each other in the group yet, you know. So others would say, well, I think maybe what if the cinder cone was all built and then the lava came out of the bottom because it was dense, like the animation. I'm not sure there's a super hard and fast rule, but what do I know? So you're asking, why didn't the heavy lava pull the cinders away? I see what you're saying. I think I did read there were some cinder cones where the lava would come out halfway up the flank, you know. The point is we're getting these cinders and this fluid syrup from the same vent. Scrolling back a little bit more. Thank you for all these comments and questions. K, would any re-erupt or are they one and done? Good question. They certainly appear to be one and done, don't they? They're so perfect. That's what I love about these cones. I guess just the basic geometry of these things are so perfect, it's pleasing. Just artistically, it's just pleasing to have something so perfect and so repetitive around the world, apparently. And so that certainly indicates to me it's a one and done thing. From my 3-year-old, does it take a long time for a volcano to be made or does it happen fast? Well, 3-year-old, thank you for watching. I think these cinder cones we're talking about are happening fast. In a few weeks, like 21 days, let's say. And there are other volcanoes where it takes years and years and years and even millions of years. Thank you for being here, 3-year-old. 2 more and we're done. Right, Pat, I agree. What is the magma source for the cinder cones in Nevada and Arizona? I don't know. Well, I'm giving away again more about tomorrow, but we'll talk about big normal faults. Big normal faults where the ground breaks and there's earthquakes like we had recently. And that's a basin range extension story. So there is plenty of minor volcanism associated with basin and range normal faults, and that stretches from central Idaho all the way down to Mexico, really. So in Nevada, that's my mind. The crust is, I'll have to wait till tomorrow, Pat. But Arizona, I don't get it. You're on the Colorado Plateau. You're north of Flagstaff, or south of Flagstaff. You're near Flagstaff. I don't get why there's magma there, and why it's young. Why it's young magma. One more. Thank you, Doug. Yeah, I'll find the paperwork and the popcorn. Frank, we'll finish with Frank. Why wouldn't there be older cinder cones? Interesting question, Frank. Thank you. It's a pile of popcorn. I just don't see how you can have a loose pile of popcorn that's going to last for more than 2 million years. Just, there's so much geologic activity that the odds are not in your favor if you want to maintain that perfect shape. Yeah, I guess that's the way I would think of it. Interesting question. But I know of no cinder cone volcanoes that are 10 million years old. And if you do, I'd love to learn about them. I hadn't thought about that till right now. But yeah, cinder cones have to be young, because it's difficult to keep those with us for so long. Okay, 10:30. A toast to you. Please come back tomorrow. Would love to have you join us Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Take two. Hey, everybody. At 9 a.m. Pacific time, tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, we will be discussing a very special place in central Idaho, southern Idaho-ish. It's called Craters of the Moon National Monument. Israel Russell was there more than 100 years ago. Many geologists have been there over the years. And if you never caught wind of why Craters of the Moon was such an inside joke, one of the first live streams we did back in March, somebody was asking about Craters of the Moon, and I immediately said, look, I don't care what topic it is. In a live audience, somebody always comes up after and asks about Craters of the Moon. I was just amazed at how many people want to ask about Craters of the Moon. So that's how we'll finish this live stream series tomorrow morning. Here is to your health. Your health. Here's to the health of all of your beloved family and friends in your communities near and far. And here's to all of us learning new things each day, each hour. It makes life interesting. If you like this video, please give me a big thumbs up and subscribe down below, and then I'll see you at the next video. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. Hope you enjoyed it. Cinder cone volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest. And we will see you tomorrow for the finale. I love you. Goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA.